So, how old are you now?
I just turned 79, and I find it shocking.
I was going to ask you, how does it feel?
It feels, like parts of me are great, there are other parts that are not so great. But, I walk past the mirror and I say, oh my God, it's my mother, or it's my sister, and it's shocking. But it is what it is, and nothing I can do about it.
And you're still here.
And I'm still here. And I say, when you wake up in the morning on the green side, you're in good shape, And, kind of my philosophy is just shut the fuck up and keep going. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Kvetching is disgusting.
It is. Now, I used to work for art, and we used to write reinvention stories all the time. And it was a lot of la-di-da, it's so great to reinvent. Tell me about yours.
Well, when you retire, like my doorman will sometimes say to me, Happy Friday, not realizing that when you're retired, every day is Friday, So the thing is, sometimes I would wake up in the morning and I didn't know what day it was, not because I was losing my mind, but only because one day, well, maybe I was losing my mind, but one day was kind of like the other.
Right.
And so it was hard to keep track. Well, what happened yesterday, and what am I going to do today? And so, I took a part-time job because money is an issue.
Right.
You get Social Security and a little stuff from an IRA, and the IRS takes it away.
Yes.
The IRA. And so, after a while, I wanted to do other stuff, but I sort of didn't know what. And then a friend of mine introduced me to this woman who runs a show called Generation Women. And it's women who stand up in a club and tell stories, life stories. They probably more successful if they're funny, but there are people who tell really heart-wrenching stories. Like the first time I went, there was a woman there who had MS and told her whole story about MS. It was funny in spots, but it was pretty...
Yeah.
Anyway, so she asked me if I would do a show, and I said yes, and there were 6 of us, and I was a wreck. But I did it, and I loved it, because I'm used to speaking in front of groups, not necessarily as a comedian, but in front of groups. And it was fabulous, and I wanted to do more and more, and she's called me for other shows, and I got called for other things, and in another week and a half, I'm doing a show at the Greenwich Village Comedy Club, which is pretty scary because some of the comics who are entertaining are, known from CBS and NBC, and here I am from Gramercy Park.
So are you thinking of maybe giving a comedy performer?
Oh, it's going to be funny.
I mean, are you thinking of becoming a comedian? Why not?
If people call me, I'll go and I'll perform. I mean, clearly you have to go through the material and see what you want to do. This one that I'm doing is about death and about whether to get buried or cremated, and it's quite funny actually.
So, what advice would you give your 27-year-old self?
Oh, probably I should have been more concerned about money and putting stuff away from my dotage. And I don't know, to just pursue whatever you want to pursue, and don't be ruled by doing a job that you hate.
Did that happen to you? Did you hate your job?
Some of the jobs I hated. I have one now that I kind of hate, but it's extra money, and you have to. It's not cheap in New York City, and you need to be. What's the word I'm thinking of?
That.
Rich.
That's the word. So why New York for you? What is it about New York?
Oh, God. You know, I was born and bred in New York. I love New York to my bones. When I leave New York and go to a place like California, I feel like a pusswort. You know what I mean? They're all blonde and beautiful and skinny and this and that and driving around in their cars. I'm not really interested. I like the mixture of peoples here. I like that it's got an old Jewish flavor to it. I like it that you can go to Zabar's and the guys who are cutting locks, well, most of them are probably Asian now, but it's a dying breed of the locks cutters, you know what I mean? And I just love being in New York, the humor, the sensibility. You know, you can't get answers like you get here in other places.
And you know, it's a kinder place than people think. Like, I've flopped on the streets a few times, and they came running at me.
Yeah, it's true. And I've seen like amazing things, like on the subway with some guy like really harassing a girl.
Yeah.
And we all circled around the girl and we said, oh, let's get off the train together at the next station. So I do think there's a great sense of helping people. And you see people helping blind people and helping elderly people cross the street, and that doesn't happen in a place where everyone's driving.
It's true. What does the word grandma mean to you? Are you...
God. You know, when my daughter got pregnant and she told me that she was going to have a baby, and then first she said it's a boy, and I thought, oh boy, I want a girl. But anyway, he was born and he was great. And you have to figure out what they're going to call you. So her mother-in-law wanted to be Bubby. I don't want to be Bubby. You know what I mean? My grandmother was Bubby. I wanted something that was a little younger and a little hipper, and Grandma sounds to me like really old. So I wanted to be Grandma Trixie, or just plain Trixie, because that's what I was called for years and years and years. My daughter thought it was really cheap, and it was not, which it was, but it was great. So when I push, he'll call me Grandma Trixie. Now I've gotten used to Grandma, and it's really sweet when he says it. I can't get mad at him, but I like Trixie a lot better.
How has sex, love, or relationships changed for you as you've gotten older?
Well, I was pretty active in my 20s and 30s, and I wrote a piece for a writing workshop that I'm in, and I wrote about sex. And I wrote about the old famous Marcia Storch, who was the feminist gynecologist, and she said to all of us, write down who you slept with, because AIDS is coming and you should know who all the people are that you've been in bed with. So I sat down with a friend of mine and we did a list. She had 13 on her list and I had 55. But the thing is, I could remember all the names but one guy. I could remember every single name of every single guy I slept with. And it was, it was great. But then in my 30s, when I turned 40, I adopted my daughter. So, I had less money, so I wasn't going out so much, and I couldn't bring guys home. I mean, that wasn't going to happen. And so, kind of my activities diminished, shall we say. And now I have to say, I would not be opposed to finding a guy and going to a concert or going out to dinner and having a little shtup every now and again. But, I find most of the guys really not so great, and the old guys, they smell like old men, they've got that horrible old man smell, and I don't know, and they're boring. They want to sit and watch golf or watch TV.
What about young guys?
Well, I thought about that, but I don't want some young guy laughing his ass off at my, at my wrinkled skin or whatever. And, no, I don't know that. But if he was blind, maybe.
Now, how's your libido? Has it changed?
Probably. I'm less interested, but every now and again you get a little turned on about something. I mean, like, there are some people who at this point in my life still turn me on. Like the guy who was on The Walking Dead, Harry, whatever the hell his name is. He was on The Good Wife. He played her investigator. And Tom Selleck, that type, they like, oh, you know. And once in a while I'll see somebody who passes in the street and I think, oh,
or the playwright we just discussed.
Oh, the playwright, Sam Shepard.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you know, too skinny, but so, you know, if I met somebody, I would not be opposed to getting involved, and I would not be opposed to having sex, but you know, that's why God made vibrators.
Exactly. So you adopted someone at 40, right?
Correct.
So how did you balance motherhood and your sex life? Did you just let it go?
I let it go. And I wasn't weeping, you know what I mean? I sort of fucked my brains out back in the day. And I did a lot of stuff, and I always wanted to be a mom. So it was not a big deal. And I remember there was some guy I was going out with when Sadie was little, and she sat on the couch, and she came and wedged herself in between us. We were just sitting on the couch watching TV. And I said to her, what would you think if I got involved with somebody? And she said, oh, I would hate it. I would be so mean to him. And so, you know, I recognized that, you know, it was an issue of, you know, being jealous and not wanting somebody in our lives. And there weren't a lot of guys at the time, so it was not so tragic, you know.
Not at all.
Although there was somebody who I went out with, I was really madly in love with him, and we worked together at the Times, and he had 2 kids, I think 2 kids, and he knew I wanted to have a child, and he said, I'll have another child if that's what it takes to keep you. But I said that I was going to go this route of adoption, which was amazingly freeing. Once I knew I was going to get my kid, I didn't look at every guy as a potential, you know, sperm donor.
Yes.
I just felt I could go about my life, and if it worked out, be good, and if not, not.
Yeah. So what happened with him?
It ended. I thought it was wiser to end it for multiple reasons, but as it turns out, he's dead now. So it's probably a good idea that, you know, we wouldn't have strolled off into the sunset together.
I'm going to give you a decade, and if you could describe it in adjective, what your sex life was like in your 20s.
Developing.
30s.
Oh, wonderfly active.
40s.
Waning.
50s.
Waned.
Do we go into the 60s?
Oh, keep going. I mean, it's like non-existent now, and I really have friends for whom it's non-existent. Although I worked with someone who was 80. And she said to me, oh, you think because I'm 80 I don't have sex? She said, my husband and I are screwing more now than we did when we were younger. And I thought, oh, well, that's interesting.
Well, it's also interesting that you're saying you're kind of interested now. It's not so much the person, but your sexual libidos.
I'm not opposed to it, but you know, not just for sex, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's different now. Now I want other things. I want someone with a sense of humor and somebody who's smart. You know, a roll in the hay is probably easy enough to get, but you know, and now God only knows what you could pick up from rolling around in the hay.
And older people get a lot of diseases,
well,
as
they,
you know.
they get AIDS. There's a lot of AIDS going around, and a lot of STDs, and you know.
Who needs it? No.
Exactly.
This is an example of something you had to learn the hard way.
I guess I would say loss. I think as you get older, I mean, for example, when I read the New York Times every day, and I read it because I work there and I love the paper and the feel and the smell of it, but I read the Obits every day, and what I'm finding now that I'm 79 is that I know someone who died every day who appears on the obit page.
Yeah.
And I think, oh my God. So it's like you lose people, whether they die or they're sick or they move away or their lives change. And it's like learning how to dance around all the holes that exist in your life. You know, I think when you lose your parents, it's like the hardest thing in the beginning because they love you unconditionally and they die with your history. So you have to make your own history and then you become them. And sometimes you even say things and you have to turn around and you think, oh, well, who was that? That wasn't me. That must have been my mother. But in fact, it was me.
So you're doing comedy now, and I wonder, what do you want for your future at this point?
I'd like to keep doing this. I'd like to maintain a close relationship with my daughter and my grandson and my son-in-law and the few family members that I have left. I'd like to resolve where I'm going to be either buried or cremated and just get that out of the way so I don't have to think about it anymore. But I'd like to be active and busy and, just doing stuff. I don't want to be thought of as an old lady. You know what I mean? I want to be busy. And when people say, how old are you? And I say, I'm 79, they say, you don't look 79. But I'm not sure if they're being polite or what the deal is. But I want to be that person who doesn't look like an old codger.
And you are that person. When do you think you felt the most sexually free in your life? Free, not active.
I think in my 30s, and I have to say now I feel intellectually free. You know what I mean? There's nothing that could get in the way except somebody dying in my bed or somebody having some dread pestilence. But I feel like just go out there and do it. You know what I mean? And get your satisfaction where you can get it in a good way. I don't mean it just pick up some scuzzball in the street, but at least get to know the scuzzball and bring them home.
You mean less inhibitions? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is who I am.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You think I'm fat or you don't like my tits or you don't like this. Go fuck yourself. I am who I am. And, I was discovering that in my 30s, which was the time of the women's movement and the consciousness raising groups and all that stuff. So it's where we learn to think better of ourselves. And now I just feel completely free of it. But now that I feel so free, there's nobody around.
What do you wish everyone in the world knew about sex?
I think it's different for everybody, and everybody has very different needs, and everyone enjoys it in different ways. But for me, I think there needs to be a kindness to it, even though I know there are people out there who like to be handcuffed and beaten and all that stuff. It's not for me, but I don't know. I think kindness in general. In sex, I think there's a lot of caressing and a lot of warmth and a lot of person-to-person contact that is more meaningful than just,
How did your life change during the pandemic?
Well, what happened in the beginning is that my daughter, son-in-law, and grandson went upstate because my son-in-law's parents have a house upstate. And he said, you better get out, my son-in-law. Better get out of here and go up. And I said, no, this is my home. And I want to be here when it comes out of this. And I want to be part of coming out. I don't want to be, away in the country. I hate the country. I don't like the bugs. I just hate it. And so they went away. Now, they're city people as well. I mean, their consideration was really their son, and that he would have a calmer life and he could be outside without a mask and run around and blah, 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 blah. What I miss them a lot. But I loved the quiet. The trees were so green. You could hear the birds chirping. There were no cars. The air smelled good. There were no exhaust fumes, and I was fortunate enough because I live in Gramercy Park and the park is right there. So I could go into the park, masked up, of course, and with gloves on and all kinds of crap, and talk to other people. So I would meet my friends and we would meet in the park. But it was a very lonely existence. Like I stopped wearing underpants because who needs them? You know what I mean? It was just like life was different, and I haven't gone back, by the way. But when my daughter came back after 3 months, they came back into the city, and she and Rafi, that's her son, rode their bicycles over to me. They live on West 27th, and Rafi stood there and looked at me, and he was trying to keep a distance so we wouldn't touch each other, and then he couldn't resist it, and he just like threw his arms around me and hugged me. And so slowly through him, really, I started engaging with the world. He said to me one day, "Grandma, I have to pee." I said, "Okay, so go behind that bush, you could pee." So then he'd come in to my house, and then I'd let him sleep over. And so as he got more and more involved with me, even though my internist said, "Oh, don't keep him away," and I said no. But that made me connect more.
Yes.
But even now, even though the city is coming back and there's a lot of stuff, I don't like it as well. It was much nicer and calmer and sweeter, even though it was lonelier, even though there were a lot of people who were monstrously hurt financially in the madness of it, and it was crazy. And at the same time, there was also this insanity going on in the world where the whole world took a turn to the right, and it's still going right. And so, you had to deal with he who shall remain nameless. That the orange said. It was awful. And now, there was a kindness that existed then. There was a kindness one-to-one. I'm not talking about the government, but one-to-one.
Yes.
And that was very nice. And I wish we could keep that kindness going, because that's all we can do as the world continues marching right.
Yes, I agree with you. I'm hoping we can retain some of the lessons. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and I worry about all women's issues and these ridiculous guys. I mean, that idiot in the House who gave up everything so he could have his position, and Roe v. Wade and abortion. I mean,
yeah, it is a tough time for women to fight all over again. And remind ourselves, it's a constant fight. I love the fact that you have remained a single woman, chose to have a baby on your own. Are these all choices that you made early in life?
Yeah, I thought I always wanted to be married and have a kid. But as I found out, and I was meeting more and more people, that, I really didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? Now, maybe it's because my mother was sick and I took care of her. Maybe I got tired of taking care of people. I'm a good caregiver. So I didn't want to do it. So now I feel like I have a daughter. I have a dog, you know what I mean? I have a grandson. I take care of them. I take care of my friends if they need help. But I wasn't interested. Most of the guys are not so interested in taking care of you. They want to be cared for. I don't want to take his clothes to the laundry. I don't want to like cook for him every night. I want to have some freedom. I like being alone. It's very nice.
Yes.
I like not having to pick up underwear and socks and stuff all over the house. I just know it's all a trade-off. If I met someone who was rich as creases, didn't smell like an old guy, and was interested and was fun, you know, maybe I would change my opinion, and maybe my college loans, you know, my daughter's loans would finally get paid off, which would be great. But that's
Solo life. I too am single, and we get this sympathy. I don't need your sympathy. I'm loving my life on my own. It's interesting that that's still a part of our world.
Well, I read something somewhere about some woman who said that she was single, and she I think she was writing something that she would put on her tombstone, which would say, "Here she lies, Miss So-and-so, who stayed miss, but don't be sad because she didn't miss as much as you think she did." And I think that's pretty much it. I don't feel like my life is lacking. If I want to go out, I can go out. I can call somebody and go out. If I want to stay home, I can stay home.
So, have you ever faked the big O?
Oh yeah, of course. Of course. You know what I mean? And the guys, they don't have a clue. You know, you do, or whatever. But yeah, I've faked. I don't like it. But, you know, there was a guy that somebody fixed me up with, and we had a great blind date. We went out to a wonderful restaurant, had a great dinner. We went home, and even though it was just, you know, the first time I met him, I invited him up. And I'm going to tell you, it was the best sex I ever had in my life. And it turned out that he was a speechwriter for Nixon.
Whoa.
And when I heard that he was a speechwriter for Nixon, I tapped him on the shoulder at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I said, "Hey, you better go." He said, "What do you mean go?" I said, "There's no way in hell that I'm waking up in the morning next to some guy who writes speeches for Nixon. Get the hell out of my house."
I knew you as a big deal art director. As a matter of fact, you were my boss at one point. So I'm very interested in the fact that you have reinvented yourself as a kind of comic. Were there steps in between?
Yeah, well, you know, when I graduated from college, I was an art teacher. And so, you know, you're always up in front of the room, and teaching is a lot of entertaining in a way, even though there's a lot of information to impart, but you're entertaining, and you're learning so much about yourself and what your needs are and how you answer certain questions and what the kids need, you know? So when I left teaching, because I couldn't take it anymore, I had a torrid love affair with one of the teachers, and I thought I'd better get out of here before I blow my brains out. So then I started working in the commercial field, and I just kind of went on, and everything got ratcheted up until I started working as a communications director, which included art direction and other things. And I did a lot of public speaking in all my jobs, and was very comfortable speaking at a microphone in front of groups of 300 people or whatever, you know? So there's like a logic from where I started to doing this now in front of people in a club. And actually in a club there are smaller groups of people.
And you're funny. You're probably always funny.
Well, I try to be, but it's not deliberate. Sometimes it just comes out that way.
Very interesting. So you never, ever even considered settling, right, in your whole life? Settling for a career, settling for a man. Let's talk relationships.
No, because there's no point. It's just like you wake up in the morning and you get angry. I don't want to be angry because I'm taking care of some guy. I mean, no, I don't want to settle because you pay a big price. You have to, every person is different. You need to figure out what the trade-off is that you're willing to make to do that.
And why?
And for me, there's no trade-off that's worth being in a relationship with where you're settled, where it's not what you need. You know what I mean? In the beginning, when you meet someone, being handsome and, and suave and all that crap wears off pretty quickly when the guy can't get it up, or when he gets sick, or when you get sick. I mean, there's more to a relationship, and to me, if you settle, you don't want to do what you have to do to maintain a warm, loving relationship, and settling gets in the way.
And I love what you said too. You decided somewhere along the line that you would adopt, so you were no longer looking for the perfect sperm. You were free of that.
Right. As soon as I did that, I was completely free, and I could enjoy dating. It was fun, and I wasn't looking to anybody to provide something that I wanted in my life. And when I said to guys that I went out with, oh, well, I'm waiting for my child to come, they would get like, and I thought, well, good, so no big deal. When my daughter comes, we don't have to go out anymore.